Now in this video, I just wanted to really talk a little bit more about lighting and how critical a part it can play no matter what you're creating in 3D. And in this case, I've got this logo that I've been working on. You've seen me pull it up a couple times throughout this course, but I haven't had a chance to talk about the lighting yet. And the lighting is in fact very simple. I've only got a few lights involved here, and if you look here in the 3D panel, I've got my, I'm in the light section over here, the fourth tab over, and we've got two lights initially here. We got an infinite light, which is created initially, and I went ahead and used it. And I've also got a point light, and that is what's giving me this massive glare on this orb right here, in this blue shape. You see that little hot spot right there? That's what's giving me that effect there. And then there's this kind of glare that's kind of giving me this light area here. That is actually my image-based light, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. So let's have a look at what we've got going on here. So the infinite light, if I went ahead and just turn this off, you can see how much lighting it's providing. It's really illuminating quite a bit of this image. So it's kind of giving me that key ambient light in the room, and just really helping to overall illuminate the object here. And you'll notice here in the properties, I've got the intensity at around 90%. I don't have any shadow properties involved, the softness or anything like that. And the color of the white or light is default white. So that's all that's going on there. So we go to the point light, and that is this little yellow orb wireframe right here. And as I said, this is providing this really hot spot on the blue shape. Over here in the properties panel, you can see I've got the intensity bumped up to around 150%. And the color is again set to white, and that's all the properties I've got there. Now the reason I'm getting that little hot spot there is, one reason is the light is placed really close to the subject. Also, if I go into my list here, my master list, and let's go ahead and select that shape, and on the front inflation, I have the shine. Now notice I've got front inflation, which is this inflated blue face of this object, and I've got the shine setting here at a relatively high setting. If I increase this, let's say I bump this up quite a bit here, you can see that hot spot starts to get a little bit tighter. So let's actually kind of bring it down. So you can see how it gets a little bit lighter around and less focused the lower the setting for the shine is. If I increase my reflection here a little bit more, you can see those areas get in more intense. And this is the beauty of lighting. In reality, let's say you have a photo shoot and you have a lighting setup, you can't control how much shadow is being cast. You can to some degree if you add more lights here and there, but you can't tell a light not to cast a shadow. It's going to cast a shadow somewhere, so you have to compensate for that with other lights. In the 3D world like this, you don't necessarily have to have that. You can actually go in there and tell it not to cast a shadow. You can even tell objects themselves not to catch shadows. If I go to the master setting here for this layer, which is layer 2, right here I have these checkboxes for catch shadows and cast shadows. These are on by default, but you can actually turn either one of these off or both of them off if you don't want any shadows involved. If you just want a light illuminating an object without realistic properties of generating shadows, you can turn those options off. This isn't an option in reality. You can't do that. So this is a huge advantage, especially when you're designing, doing logo effects and things like that, or any type of 3D element that you can control the lighting like that. You can also control it per surface. You can control the shine per surface. If I want a little bit more shine on the front inflation or on the extrusion, I can go and select that specifically and give that a custom setting. I can even increase the specularity of it. Let's just make that a little bit brighter. And that's a little bit overblown, but you can see if I increase the specular or make the specular light considerably brighter, we're going to get that much more of a hot spot on it. So not only do you have control of where the lights are positioned, but also how they behave, the color of them. All these different things can play into your design. So you don't have necessarily always have to color an object. You can color the light and get something a little bit more dramatic going on. Now the last thing I want to talk about with regard to lighting, and there's considerably more about lighting we can get into. That's almost a whole course in and of itself, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how lights work, and hopefully you can go in and experiment with them. So image-based lights. So this element right here, this kind of line we've got like here with this cool glare on the object, that is actually a light called an image-based light. So if I go into the environment tab here and jump over to my properties panel, at the very top we have this checkbox and it says IBL, which stands for image-based light. So this gives a little preview of what my image is right now. Now, the way to think about an image-based light is almost like a layer mask for light. So kind of like, and if you want to think about it in photography, it's almost like using a flag or some kind of, drape to mask the light or cover the light, part of the light maybe, or just kind of diffuse the light in a sense as well. But you can also do it based on an image. So if I go into this little folder icon here and just go and choose Edit Texture, this is what my light is shining through. So the black area, there's no light coming through because it's blocking it entirely, and this light gray area is only partially letting light through. If it were white, it would let 100% of the light through. So you can see how it works like a layer mask. And I've got this kind of angled shape in here just to kind of give it some variation. So if I close that, and I go in here and I've got that environment selected, I can see this small orb right here. And if I go and click and move this around, let's get the right tool here. And notice as I move this image-based light around, those elements are changing on the surface of my object. And one way to think about this is if you ever see product shots or even a vehicle shot where you can see the studio lighting kind of reflecting in the subject or on the surface of something like that, and maybe it's like a series of like fluorescent light bulbs that are just kind of distorted in there, this is how you would create that effect. And you can create it, and you can change its angle just by using the 3D tools and maneuvering this around. So again, it could be a graphic element like I'm using here. It can be a photo, any texture file you want to basically shine light through, almost as if it was a filter or a gel even of a light. So you can add that and add a little bit more realism to your subject, and in the sense of this glare right here. I can even go in here and let's do this. Maybe put a gradient on the side here, and let's just close that and see what happens to that. And once again, let's go ahead and move that around. So again, lighting takes a little bit of practice to move it around. So you can see that faded area is kind of coming into the shape there. And we can certainly just play around with that. But certainly give you another option. So you've got ultimately four different types of lights. Your points, infinites, spotlights, and image-based lights all have their own properties and various cool effects you can apply. Certainly something you definitely want to experiment with in conjunction with 3D that you create, but there's also great effects you can achieve just with the lighting, and we're certainly going to cover more stuff like that in the next few months with tutorials that I'm starting to prepare for that and such like that. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Now, that just about covers most of the basics of 3D. Now, what I'm going to do in the next lesson, which is the last lesson, I really want to kind of take everything we've talked about up to this point and really just kind of put it all together in a small project so you can kind of see the workflow in one fell swoop. So we've kind of broken everything down. Hopefully you've got a better understanding of how to create 3D, modify it, extrude it, revolve it, do all that, apply your textures and surface properties, and then modify your lighting, and then there you have it. So let's go into the next lesson and just dive in and see what we can get just by going through these steps pretty quickly.